There we go. Hi, Sarah. Thank you again for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself and maybe about your son too?
Yeah. Well, I'm Sarah. I go by Space K Sarah. I'm a professional science communicator, and this is Miles. We call him Moo Moo.
Hi, Miles.
And yeah, like I said, I'm a professional science communicator. I have a radio show called Cosmic Waves with Space K Sarah that's on iRock Space Radio, which is on the iHeartRadio platform. I don't have that down to a drill, right? And then yes, I have I write for Blue Marble Space Institute of Science as their head science writer, and I also help produce Ask an Astrobiologist for NASA TV with them. And yeah, a lot of things going on, so I'll just kind of stop there.
That's amazing. That seems like that would keep you fully busy all the time.
Yes, I got a lot going on. Yeah, and I'm going back to grad school now, so I just started that, and I am going to be on the university podcast having my own like science segment, so I'm really excited about that. And I'm missing something, but I like, you think I would remember my own work. I'm like, what am I forgetting? I'm forgetting something. But yeah, I'm involved in a lot, and it's a lot of space stuff.
Well, I do remember how you first got started in all that. Like, what was the first project that you did?
It's a really, really loaded story. I don't know how much time you have.
I have as much time as you have.
Okay.
So
It's a big story. So my interest in space science actually didn't happen until I was an adult. I was raised in a very fundamental kind of Christian cult, and we were young Earth creationists, and so we were very expressly told that NASA was kind of stupid and they were wasting their time looking for answers that we already had. Dinosaurs maybe weren't even real, and but they are real, don't worry. So I was very science illiterate. And then when I got older, I got kicked out of the church because I asked too many questions. And but I still kind of kept like religion, politics, science, everything just at an arm's length, because it just was, it was just too hot of a topic. So I just kind of ignored it. And it actually was, I have a daughter who's at school. It was when I had my daughter, I was like, maybe I should start thinking about some of these things a little more critically. What do I think? And I actually, in, I don't know, the throes of some late night hour staying up with my newborn, I watched an episode of Cosmos, and it was the first time I had seen Cosmos ever. And it was that, it was the reboot, not the Carl Sagan one, but it was that first episode, and it showed the cosmic calendar, and my mind just went, I had no idea of how much I didn't know. So I started, from that point on, I just started ravenously reading and just consuming anything I could get my hands on about space science, cosmology. I ended up learning about astrobiology in this process, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the coolest thing I've ever learned of. If in another life I would have gone to school for science. Like that was my line of thought at that time. I was just like, oh man, that would have been, if I could go back in time, I would have gotten my undergrad in science. So I mean, I guess it's, kind of a obvious thing to point out, but we only have one life. So I got into actually kind of a very scary car accident on the way home from an astronomy event, because I am an amateur astronomer now too. And that was my aha moment. It was just that snap moment. I was like, another life, as if I had another life to live. So the very next day I was making phone calls, and I was asking people that I knew, like, how do I go back for my master's in science? Because this is what I want to do, And so it's been actually kind of a little windier of a path than I initially thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to go back for like biology or something to get into astrobiology. What ended up happening was I started taking classes at my nearby community college, just any and all science, biology, geography of the solar system, chemistry, physics, everything. And then COVID hit. And I had this like, oh no, like my momentum is gonna, I'm gonna lose my momentum. What do I do? And at that point, I got kind of steered in the direction of Blue Marble Space Institute of Science, which has internships. And one of the internships was science communication. And I was like, well, you know, I have my undergrad is in English and writing. I've taken a lot of science. Maybe I can, you know, just make a jump and apply for this and see what happens. And I got in, and now I'm their senior writer. But so ever since then, it's just been, I applied for that and I got in, and it's just been ba-bam, 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 just, yeah, it's just been a snowball of getting into the right places and the right time. And, you know, I got accepted to be a NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador. And so, you know, I do a lot of outreach for them in that capacity. And, you know, it's just wild to me now that I go to these weekly meetings where there's, you know, NASA engineers and like, you know, I've had multiple conversations with Thomas Zuberkin, who's the head of science at NASA. And I'm in a group that has, you know, Chris Hatfield, he's part of the inspiration for it. Like, it's just so wild how it escalated quickly. Yes, baby. You can show him your Saturn V really quick.
Oh,
he wants to show you his Saturn V. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
we're super spacey nerdy here now. So come on. He got this for Christmas.
Wow, that is amazing. Is it made out of like foam?
Yeah, it's like a pillow. Yeah.
Okay, that is really neat.
Yep. So
great for playing toss and other games too.
Yeah. It's good for launching, right? Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, that's kind of the really, really, really quick packaged synopsis of how I got into space science. But I think one of the things that has been awesome for me is that I genuinely did not know so much. And so as I learn new things, I turn around and I'm like, oh my God, did you guys know this? And sometimes people are like, yes, Sarah, we always knew that. And I'm like, well, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know that there were 5 mass extinctions, you know? So like, for me, I just, you know, it never gets boring. And the space industry is just this amazing industry to be in now with all the private sectors and yeah. And, you know, now we have James Webb that's up there. So it's just, I kind of feel like I've really found this beautiful sweet spot of really liking to talk to begin with, and having kind of an undergrad that lends well into communicating science. So, and I really like also being a science communicator and the fact that I can be very versatile in what I get to talk about, as opposed to when I was looking to go back for my master's in biology, which was, you know, I still actually am affiliated with the lab that I was looking to get into. Like, I still go to their lab meetings and stuff. But what they do is, you know, they just study little parts of prairies and the little microorganisms. That's all they do is, you know, just run these samples. And I was like, I don't know if that would have been enough for me. So I'm really happy to be doing what I do now. So it's kind of the long short.
I have a gazillion things I want to follow up you on. I guess the first thing is, have you seen that movie that came out on Netflix in December, Don't Look Up?
Yes, I actually just saw it this weekend. I did.
Do you feel like that's probably a good analogy to sort of the fundamentalist religious kind of situation versus your transformation?
Yeah, you know, it honestly is, they have a narrative that they have to stick to, and nothing you can ever say is going to change their mind. So it does not matter. So for me, what's very frustrating, and most of my family is still in this, in that church. What's frustrating to me is they always have this get out of jail card, essentially, where you could be like, well, look at, you know, I don't want to say carbon dating, but, you know, like radio, different types of dating methods, and show them that and talk about isotopes and things. And they'll just be like, yeah, God made it look that way. You know, or like, you know, it's always this get out of jail free card where it's like, well, like, what about, you know, the order of fossils? You know, you will never find an ammonite up in the Cretaceous period because, you know, obviously that the layers are oh yeah, that's just, you know, that's just God made it look that way. And it's like, so I don't even really, yeah, it's frustrating. Don't Look Up was, yeah, an interesting, I think, comparison. To me, it was more interesting in the critique of, because I work in communications, that the noise that people pay attention to over the real thing. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, for example, I don't know, I don't really follow football, but I grew up in Wisconsin. That's what's on my wall, and everyone's, a big Packer fan. So I just saw, on my news feed, everyone's like, oh my God, sports ball, and I'm just like, but nobody gives this much attention to launching, the most significant telescope that we've ever developed, right? It's just the disparity of what people have interest in or critique over too, in the sense that you have people who are so upset about the millionaires or billionaires going to space, but nobody's upset about the Super Bowl and how much money that they're spending on that. But that to me, Don't Look Up really highlighted that for me. So anyway.
Yeah, I've been kind of trying to tease apart about why we are interested in things like sports and politics and the stock market, and not interested in like scientific discovery and those types of things. And I have a theory I've been working on, like to run it by you. And
Okay.
I think a lot of it has to do with the certainty of the outcome.
Okay.
Like people really like those things that are uncertain, and that really drives like an interest. So the James Webb telescope, like getting launched, I think there's a high degree of certainty that it would actually get launched, that there really wouldn't be like any major conflict that needed to be resolved type of thing. There wasn't something that put people on the edge of their seats, like, is this going to happen? Is it really going to do it? And I think that's also why people lost interest in the space program after that first landing. It's just like, up until that point, can we do it? Can we do it? Is the Russians going to beat us? That type of thing. And it's
right.
It feels like you almost need sort of that
drama.
The drama.
Yeah.
You need to have some type of, I don't know which way it's going to go. We need to,
that is an interesting theory. Yeah, actually, I would agree with that. That probably is a very valid point, and probably why also people pay attention to, like sports and stuff, because it's dramatic. And even though your team's going to come back next year, so who really cares? But, like, that to me has never made any sense. How and like, you're not even a player. So I don't know, like, why, but whatever.
No, and the other thing is these communities having so much vested interest in these teams that probably aren't made up of any players from that community.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, to the Packers' defense, I will say that is the only team in the NFL that is owned by shareholders, so it's like the people own the team. So it's a little bit different than, a lot of other sports ball teams. I'm like, sports ball, whatever. But yeah, that is an interesting theory. I kind of agree.
And you mentioned that some of your family members are still part of this fundamentalist religious group.
Kind of culty, yeah.
And culty. And you must interact with them on a regular basis.
Not a tremendously regular basis. I will see. One was on the floor and Hubble chewed it. Yeah, so we gotta keep him off the floor.
The dog's named Hubble?
I have a dog named Hubble, yeah.
James Webb coming soon?
No, I did think about getting a second one and naming it Kepler. So they have a Hubble and a Kepler, but luckily I didn't, which actually kind of brings me to my point of in a little bit more of my personal life. After I got kicked out of the church, and this is why I would consider it kind of somewhat of a cult, they basically cornered me, and then they were like, if you don't tell your parents, we're gonna, print it in the newsletter, and that's how they're gonna find out. And I'm not sure if that's how they found out, but my parents stopped speaking to me at that point for a while. Then I, so inappropriately moved in with my boyfriend, and so then they really stopped speaking to me for a while. And then I got married, but I'm actually divorced now. And when I went through that whole process, then they really stopped talking to me again. So I'm just kind of like the black sheep that perpetually just disappoints them over and over. And that keeps us a little bit at an arm's length. And I'm also, I'm a little bit more vocal in expressing my frustrations about the way that certain things are in that community. Women are very subpar minorities. So they can't vote on church matters. They're not allowed to go to church meetings. It's very 1800s weird backwards world there. So I've vocalized my disapproval of that a lot. And so obviously that's caused some tension. So, but I mean, kind of flip side of the coin, one of the things that they, again, they can just always kind of twist their narrative to make it work for them. But my life is doing incredibly well, despite all the black sheepedness. And, you would think from their mentality, it should be like, oh, she should be struggling because she's strayed so far, and no, I'm fine. So
I would say you're not a black sheep, you're a black swan.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I think my trump card is that I have the kids. So I have 3 sisters. 2 of them are still in it, and 1 is out as well. And the one that's out, we kind of always joke back and forth who's the bigger black sheep. And I'm like, I have the kids. Like, you're never gonna out black sheep me until you have, like, I don't know, a child out of wedlock. Then maybe she'll win. So I'm not sure. But yeah, it's one of those things though that I found when I start talking about it and I become more open and honest about it, people appreciate kind of the journey that I've been on to be where I am now. And now I get to talk to NASA people and rub elbows with inspiration for astronauts. And it's like, sometimes imposter syndrome is a big thing for me. I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here, but.
But that idea of kind of knowledge that comes from observation and thought and testing versus knowledge that comes from an authority and is accepted from that. I see a little bit of that also in the science and space community as well, that we're kind of just accepting and repeating things as facts, when what we should really be kind of encouraging is critical thinking and self-observation. Like, go prove this for yourself,
Right.
I feel like sometimes, like, whenever we do like science experiments and then turn out just right, we're like, our experiment must be wrong, because it needs to conform to this result, right? But sometimes it's those things that those discrepancies that actually are the pathway to a deeper understanding.
Yeah, for sure. No, I absolutely agree. That was, the big problem that I had coming from my world was I started asking questions and I asked too many, and I just couldn't accept things for face value. And yeah, there's definitely some criticism of that in the scientific community, that we shouldn't just accept what a scientist says just because they're, a scientist, and we should, just blindly accept what they say. Yeah, it's a fine line though, right? Because, actually it's kind of funny. I'm in a class right now about globalization and communication and stuff like that. And the rise of the internet and the ability for wrong minority voices to have such a strong platform and have such a loud voice is, it's concerning, and it makes it very difficult for people to disseminate the truth from, the facts and what's right and what's wrong. And so, yeah, it's an interesting thing to me to kind of decide, but even in Cosmos, when you watch Cosmos, even not Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson says, like, don't even believe me just because I say it, like, go test it for yourself. So yeah, I'm a huge Carl Sagan fan. Don't get me wrong. I love his, it's just, his Cosmos wasn't the first one I saw, but I'm a massive Carl Sagan fan. Massive. So.
Yeah, I'd be interested in talking to some people from kind of the fundamentalist religious view. If didn't know if maybe you could connect.
If I know, I could let me think on that.
Okay, think on that.
Yeah, mine is, like I said, a little bit really culty. They probably would be hesitant to talk to you, but maybe my sister would. I don't know. I can definitely, if you have questions about what they think, I was raised in their mindset. I can argue flip
Both sides.
oh yeah, easily. And not only I can argue from their standpoint, they isolate themselves because they believe that they're like the only ones who have it right, as most churches do. But
Sure.
they're so isolated that they refuse to engage with any other Christian churches, even because they're like, nope, we're the only ones and you're all wrong. And so like we weren't allowed to even like pray with someone who wasn't part of our circle. So that's how like, yeah, deeply mistrusting and very, it was very us versus the world. And imagine my surprise when I got out into the world and I was like, wow, like people are actually okay.
Have you read Educated?
I have. Oh, that's a hard one for me. Yes, I have. Oh, that's a hard one. I'm not finished with it. It's actually on my side table right now. Yeah, that's a hard one because some of it, so much of the dad in that reminds me of my dad, like verbatim. Some of the things that he says, I'm like, yep, I heard that too. My parents were okay with medical care. I honestly think though, if they were influenced now by like the internet and what's around them right now, I think I probably would have been not vaccinated. But in the 80s when information wasn't as spread the way that it is now, my parents were okay with medical care, so there's a difference there from that story. But yeah, that's a powerful book that honestly I've thought about writing my own sometimes, kind of inspired by that. But yeah, maybe one day, possibly.
I've actually talked to a flat earther as well. I found him on the streets of Mexico City. He was visiting for a judo conference. He was from California.
Okay.
And it was, it's kind of interesting. I mean, my point of the project is not to convince people about my views, but just to try to see the world from their perspective, like
Sure.
that type of thing. And but it's also caused a lot of reflection of how those perspectives emerge and then kind of stay put. And I think a lot of it is actually driven by identity and the wanting to belong to a group.
Yep.
I think the higher the cost of joining a group, the more meaningful membership in that group is.
Yeah, 100%.
And so if the cost is complete denial of everything that you see and think, that's a pretty high cost.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of, I think it plays into that allure of having knowledge that other people don't have too, right? That like elitism of like, I know things and the other people like, you poor people out there, you don't know the truth. I remember distinctly being told that, like, all these poor people, they don't know the truth. Their lives are so empty and so sad because they don't know the truth. One of my cousins is actually a flat earther. And again, this is where I'm saying like their narratives can be so cherry picky. And it's once you start seeing that as it is, you're like, it's kind of like talking to someone who believes that Santa Claus is real and there's nothing you can say that's going to change their mind about that. And, I've come to peace with this, to a degree. Sometimes I'm still a little angry, but the reason my cousin, I can tell you why he believes that the earth is flat is because there is a line somewhere in Genesis that says, there's firmament over the earth, which is supposed to be that cover, that dome over the earth. And, they're literalists. So they literally believe everything is real. It's just really funny. So like sometimes though, they're like, well, no, it's how you interpret it. And it's like, like you can make an excuse for that, but not that, but not for that. So, he's kind of like, yep, if that's what's in the Bible, it's got to be 100% right. So, I mean, he honestly, like, he's not wrong if that's what you adhere to, right? You have to admit to that. So I don't know. It was, for me, one of the things I actually did tackle first before I got into science was religion when I had my daughter. So that was the first thing I was like, okay, I got kicked out of that and I know I don't want to be a part of that. but why? Like, I need more concrete, evidence and reasons why I at least don't want to be part of that group. Like, I wasn't opposed to like, oh, maybe I'm open to some other, denomination, some other Christian church or something like that. And then I read a book called Who Wrote the Bible, but it's actually just looking at the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch. And the author right away is like, yeah, so, we think there are about maybe 3 or 4 people who wrote this. And then there was like a 5th editor who kind of laced it all together in an interesting way, which if you read it literally, it says Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. So that's sort of like, okay, well, that's interesting. And then right off the bat, they're like, yeah, there's 2 creation orders in Genesis 1 versus Genesis 2. And I'm like, what?
What?
Yeah. like, they never told us that, and then you keep reading on this other things that you're like, they intentionally gloss over those things because it does not fit their narrative. So they cannot bring that up. If it's literal and non-errant or, inerrant, you can't point out that there's 2 creation orders because that's a blatant contradiction. So that was sort of my like, all right. I ascribe kind of to an agnostic-y atheist kind of line of thinking now, because to me it's a book of probably a lot of real stuff that happened. It's just stories and humans trying to make sense of the world, like we still are doing, and now we just have science that has different ways of explaining things, and it's still wildly confusing, and there's big mysteries. That's why my show is actually called Cosmic Waves. It's a nod to the double slit experiment, the particle double slit experiment. So it's like, that's one of my favorite ones because I just love that. I love that there are answers that we're like, we don't know. And I love it. I love not knowing, as opposed to coming from a system that was like, we know everything. We have answers for everything. And we know exactly why, basically they can default back to God did it. That's the way God made it. They have all the answers. And I love not having answers. Like, how do those electrons know if we're looking at it or not? I love it. That's I love it so much.
So you mentioned astrobiology, and
Yes.
I was wondering if you've seen or read Andy Weir's latest book, Project Hail Mary.
I haven't. I heard somebody say they weren't a huge fan of it, but I haven't gotten to his new book yet. No, I should probably check it out because I love The Martian, obviously. And then what was the other one he wrote and released? Artemis. Yeah. Maybe that was the one.
It's about the caper on the moon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into it.
I definitely recommend, if you're going to check out Artemis, that you get the audiobook, because I think the actress that does that does a wonderful job.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I will have to look into that. I actually just found out last week I selected to be on an analog Mars crew mission for the Mars Desert Research Station. So I'm going to be the crew journalist. So maybe that would be something good to take along to keep me in the spacey mindset, right? Because we're not going to have internet. Well, you have windows of internet with a, intentional delay, but yeah. Anyway, I just found that like, this is like my life lately. I'm just like, this good news, this good news, this good news. Like, I just wake up and basically it's like, what good news? I feel like that's really braggy, but that's what it's been lately. Yeah, because that's right. When you first reached out to, I just got back from Mount Everest, climbing up to base camp 1. So yeah, I know. And then I come back and I find out I'm going to be on an analog mission out in Utah for a couple of weeks, and like normal people do.
How was Mount Everest?
It was amazing. I think someone on our group kind of said it best, that sometimes some of the most incredible things to remember are also some of the most incredibly difficult things that you've done. And that was definitely kind of the dichotomy of that experience. It was hard, but it was also amazing. I mean, to give you an example, the second or third day is it's supposed to be the hardest climb day. It actually, spoiler for us, was not, but and you go up 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 and you go up. And it's just, it never ends. It's like you're looking at the tree lines up there and you're like, God, there's got to be a top somewhere up there. There's got to be a top. And it just like goes and goes. But even once I got to the end and got up to the Namche Bazaar is the name of the town that you hit up there, that just the wall of scenery hit me. I mean, that was the first time I cried. I cried like 7 different times on it, but which I cry a lot. So it's not weird. But you just, you know, it was still like, even though it was so sucky, it didn't take away from how amazing and beautiful it was. Okay. Yeah, so it was, that elevation is no joke. I keep telling people that, but like now I understand how people just go to sleep and die at that high of elevations, because your head gets really like whoop to do, especially when we hit base camp and then we were coming back, because base camp's at 17,500 feet. And you have to actually go up a little bit to get down to base camp and then go back up and then get back to where you're going to spend the night. And like the trail at that point is just like, you're just sort of mountain goating on these big boulders. And my head was just, and I was literally like, I can just lay down, you know, and just go to sleep right now. That's how I feel. And yeah, it was, like I said, it wasn't, that one day wasn't the hardest day though. Actually, honestly, the hardest day was, we had a very unexpected freak snowstorm hit. And so we had to cut a day back down short. And also, by the way, it is not up and then down. The whole trail is like, beep, 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 beep. So, you know, it's like the story your grandparents tell you, like, I walked to school in the snow uphill both ways. Yes, that's literally what you do on Mount Everest Base Camp Trail. It's like almost, it feels like it's uphill both ways. And so one of the, like, not as bad as that one day, but a pretty significant up day was when we had to take down right after it snowed, and it was just slick, you know what I mean? And so you had to really brace yourself and use muscles that you're so used to climbing up, that these were like muscles that you really hadn't used that much. And oh my God, that was a terrible day going down. It was, yeah. So that was, I would say, actually really the hardest day. Also, when it snowed that day too, it was, we had to go in, like, hike through a snowstorm. And I genuinely was thinking at a couple of points, I'm like, this is the story of the 10 hikers that went out and got lost on the trail, you know, because it's remote wilderness in between these little towns that you stop and stay at. I'm sorry, I'm like talking to you like you know what I'm talking about. So you go up this trail and you stay in what they call tea houses in these villages that are all the way situated up to the mountain, or up very close to Base Camp 1. And the tea houses are not heated except for the main room. And above a certain elevation, they heat it with yak dung, which smells interesting. So you stay at these little tea houses, and then you'll stop usually every 2 days or 3 days to acclimate, because that's how dramatically high, you know, you're going. And yeah, it's just this like super amazing cultural experience, because, you know, you're in this national park that one of the rules in the park is that they don't slaughter animals because of their Hindu beliefs. So there's no meat. So like you eat vegetarian, like dal bhat is the traditional meal there. It's just like, you know, it's just it's not what people expect. You say Everest and everyone thinks of the summit and going up a bunch of snow, but it's like solidly over half of it is low enough elevations that you're still in like pine tree, you know, like there's a tree line that you'll eventually hit that everything goes away. But, you know, there's a lot of portions of it, again, because you're going up and down and up and down, you're seeing lots of trees, and they use yows and mules to carry everything up and down. And there's huge suspension bridges that those animals go on to. And it's just, yeah, it's it's amazing. So Google it sometime, or YouTube, and you'll be like, wow, this is not what I expect. So
what motivates you to go to the base camp?
That is a good question. So I saw someone else, actually, it was another science communicator who I have to credit also a lot of my career to now, who did it. And when I saw his pictures, especially of like the suspension bridges and the animals and stuff, I was like, that's what it's like to go up to Mount Everest Base Camp. And then I just started watching just videos after videos, and I got it in my head that that's what I wanted to do. And my boyfriend, who I met actually learning to scuba dive, we met, and I told him, like, this is what I've always wanted to do. And he was like, oh my God, I've always wanted to see Everest. And so we were actually going to go to Africa over Christmas break. My ex was going to take the kids for Christmas break this year. And then plans just kept falling through. And finally, one day he calls me, he's like, let's do Everest. And I was like, I don't know, like, the tours get sold out, like, I just don't know. And so here's where I'm going to say I am agnostic-y, because sometimes there's too much woo in my life that it just, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. So we had determined for Africa, because I needed to tell my less than easy to work with ex very specific dates when we were going to be gone. And I said, okay, fine, from December 19th through January 2nd. Let's just tell him those 2 weeks or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, let's just tell him that, so he will get off my back. And so then when I went to go look for a tour with the group that I've always been eyeing up, they had a group going December 19th through January 2nd, like exact dates. I know. And I was like, okay, I think we're supposed to go. Like, I think this is a sign that we should go. So we booked it, and everything just fell into place. It was really weird. There's just so many things. I mean, even just meeting someone who's insane enough to want to go do that with me was sort of like the odds, So this is where I sometimes it's just, there's too many coincidental good things that keep happening that I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I will give a little acknowledgement to it. Like even getting into my grad program, I honestly applied to it because I just wanted to get my master's, but then I found out afterwards that they have graduate assistantships for my particular department. And so I emailed my advisor. I was like, yo, what's up with this? And he's like, oh yeah, we have an opening. Do you want it? It covers all your tuition. And I was like, okay, yeah. And he's just like, just send me this piece of paperwork and it's yours. And I was like, so my grad school's paid for. Like, okay. I know. I feel like I'm bragging, but I'm serious. Like, I don't know what's happening. It's just like, I have some weird Midas touch going on right now. So I don't know. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I actually had a coworker die in September, and that kind of jiggled a lot of stuff for me. Like the day before Inspiration 4 launch, I was thinking about, going or not going, and I decided not to go. I found out the day that he died. He was like just on a meeting like with me the previous week, had no clue, not COVID.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't really work closely with them, but I was like, wow. And so I like looked up and see if I could go to Inspiration 4, booked the ticket, went to Inspiration 4, watched the launch. It was my first launch. Yeah. And it was really cool. And then about a month later, a friend of my son's who's training to become a Spartan ISS mission, flight controller, posted on Facebook that they have an opening in their next training class. And so he like tagged me with that. I like looked at it, it's like entry level position, but I'm like, that actually is a benefit in my thing because it's a completely new area for me. And my other thought was to go do a master's in, space studies at Rice, which would have cost money. And so this actually makes a little bit.
Yeah.
So I like thought about it, because most people apply to this immediately out of college, and I'm like 46 now. I was 45 when I applied, though.
I feel you on this. So yeah.
Well, it took me 12 years to graduate from college, which actually turned out to be a plus, I think, on the resume.
Okay.
Just kind of like chop off the experience before that.
Right, exactly. It's how you spin it, right? Yeah. It's like, this is a pro. Yeah.
Yeah. So I applied, ended up getting it, and I'm actually starting next month. Going. I'll be working for KBR. I'll be a NASA contractor, but I'll be training to be a flight controller. So I'm just like,
that's amazing.
Really excited about it. And
that's so cool.
My dream of dreams is that eventually I'll be able to switch over to the Artemis program and be in mission control when the first people step on the moon.
Oh my
That
God,
would
that's
be
so
like
cool. Okay, now
the
we need to
ultimate.
stay connected. So that way I have like an in on that program when that happens. Yeah, that is amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really excited about it. And have you been to the Johnson Space Center?
I live in the Midwest. I know it's sad. I'm like in the worst place for space. But yeah, no, I have not.
Yeah, well, if you ever come down, I give you a tour. But we have a visitor center that
Yeah.
you know, people go to, and the Johnson Space Center is actually fenced off. And the only thing that you could do is ride the tram over to select areas, like the catwalk that goes across the, you know, vehicle mock-up facility, and
Yeah.
then you get to go to the Apollo era mission control and see kind of recreation of the day that they stepped on the moon. But other than that, like, the entire campus is closed. But in the 1980s, when my dad took me there, Space Center Houston didn't exist, and the campus was completely open. So you would actually walk from building to building, and they would have like ad hoc exhibits set up. And
Oh,
you just felt like part of the, I mean, that you're actually visiting the facility, you know.
right.
It's kind of crazy. So I feel like I'm getting to go back in time a bit to that
Yeah.
point when I could do that.
That's so
So
exciting. That's so cool. And like, yeah, I mean, isn't it so wild that it's just taking risks and just trusting that, like, you know what, if it fails, it fails. And then, you know, just seeing where your path takes you seems to work really well. I don't know. It's such a cool thing. That's amazing. Congratulations.
yeah, it's really thrilling. I just
Yeah.
yeah. And so talking about the moon, so when
Yes.
did you find out that we were planning to send people back to the moon?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. That's a good question. I can't pinpoint that exactly. I just know that when I found out, I wanted a patch, and I had to search really hard to find someone who was making Artemis patches, because nobody really like they had maybe just announced the patch, you know, the Artemis logo. But no, there was no official merch being sold for it yet. I don't even know if there still is, to be honest. But so I had to go off on Etsy, like a Etsy hunt, to go find somebody making a patch for it. But I can't remember how long ago that was. I don't know. That's a hard one for me to remember now. Somewhere in the journey, I don't know when it was, of this space exploration and learning about space. Because for me, it was biology, astrobiology. I wasn't quite as involved initially in the rockets and the launches and that kind of stuff. Like, I was more into the hard science, if you will. I was more interested in that initially. And then I've drifted a lot into, yeah, like missions and programs and, you know, those kind of things. So, which are just as equally exciting to me as like what Perseverance is looking for. So again, science communication, it's a good place for me. So I wish I could give you a definitive answer. I don't know. It was probably not too long after it was announced, which, let me see.
I think that was kind of in 2018, 2019.
Yeah, that
like
would
that.
probably time out right about when I was May 2019, they're saying. So that would make sense. That was when I was really into astronomy. Like, I was starting to get into astronomy, because that Christmas of 2019, I had gotten my first telescope. Now I have 3. Don't ask me how. And I was starting to get involved in more astronomy stuff. Because initially for me, it was just science. Like, science in general was just super exciting. And so I started working. I have actually a lot of history working in nonprofits. So I started working as in fund development for our local natural history museum. So I was like, everything was exciting, and it still is, but, you know, like paleontology, oh my gosh. And we actually have a really cool paleontology department at that museum. So anyway, yeah, I just can't remember exactly when the transition into space started really taking a big hard turn into the, you know, like ongoing and current and upcoming missions. Happened at some point. I just can't linearly remember exactly when that happened.
Well, you know, most of the people that I interview just randomly off of the street, like at coffee shops in the mall, those places,
Really?
I would say about 80% of them don't know that we're going to the moon. And I was wondering if that sort of is consistent with your experience and expectation.
Definitely. Honestly, not just going to the moon, but I find that people are painfully ignorant about um, just anything in space science really right now in terms of what's building and what's growing and our ultimate mission to get to Mars at some point. You know, I honestly think that space has like a really bad PR problem right now, in that you know, think about that. I mean, rightly so. There should be some criticism of the billionaires, but you know, when Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin went up, all you just saw was like billionaires going to space, and that was like the focus of it, right? It wasn't like, hey, look at this commercial space industry that's starting to blossom, and like we're actually doing it now. It was like, look at these billionaires and their phallic sized, you know, space rockets. And you know, I just, to me, it was like, I don't know. The message wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. So yeah, I would agree. Most people do not know that we're going to go back to the moon. And I mean, you know, with the delay of Artemis again, probably doesn't help the PR cause either at this point, but
Definitely messes with my project.
I would imagine, yeah. I feel like what, and you know, actually on my radio show, we just had a conversation about this. I think what some of it is we need to refigure out what catches attention in the same way that the right stuff did back in the Apollo era. Because obviously what happened in that time was, you know, the Cold War, and you had all these very macho American men, and, you know, like, and people loved that. So how do we rebrand that message and draw interest again on that human connection scale? Because that's, I think, the key, is that you have to bring, it's why like stupid, you know, like, I don't know, stupid TV shows seem to work too, right? Because it's just showing humanity and their flaws and blah, blah, blah. And like somehow people connect to that. I feel like we need that again. And so I'm not totally sure how that's going to look, but I think that that's what's missing still with the Artemis project, is that we don't know who's going. We don't know the specific humans that have been chosen specifically yet. And I think once that happens, then there's an opportunity to recapture the imagination, because you have that human element in it now. Because again, going back to nonprofit work, but there is a science to how do you get your organization to stand out when there are tons of nonprofits holding up their hands looking for money, right? And studies show that you could be like, there are 17 million starving children around the world, and people hear those numbers and they're like, oh, that's cool. That's a number. That's a big number. That's a lot. Cool. But if you show them that picture of Jose, the starving child, and, you know, then they're more like, oh, because you brought humanity and you brought a personalization to it. And I think that's what probably we need for Artemis specifically. And we just don't have that yet. But yeah, in my experience, I mean, my radio show, even, like, I have to explain what it is to people and they're like, what? Because my CEO he's licensing music above the Carmen line. So that way, when there is a space hotel, it's our music that's already up there and licensed, right? But like, who thinks of that? So most people are like, what? And I'm like, yeah.
I bet you that's easy to purchase right now.
Yes, yeah. Well, so he used to do, like, he worked in the music industry. So he's like making it up. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody was like, we should have licensing for music above this line. He's like setting the standard of like, yes, I'm going to dominate that industry. But, you know, it's like, people don't know that there's, you know, space junk, and that there's going to be space collection agencies, or, you know, space junk agencies, or that there is going to be a space hotel. Like, people just don't know because it's not here. And I kind of chuckle inside, and you'll probably chuckle too, when this project is done and Artemis comes, and you'll be like, yeah, look at how long I was doing this and waiting for this. And now here we are. And there's going to be all these people that'll be like, when did this come about? And we'll be like, yeah, we were here for 5 years. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, That's kind of how I feel right now. Is like, yep, we were here. We're just waiting for the right moment.
Yeah, that's why I think this project is important actually, is because this is a special moment in time when
Yeah,
both the optimist and the skeptic can both point to evidence and reasons why their viewpoint is right. And we're sort of, there's still like the outcome is uncertain at this point. But
sure.
once we start having, starships launching multiple times every hour from all over the world to all sorts of destinations, and we have orbital hotels and people going to the moon, there won't be any uncertainty. It'd be just like
Yeah,
commercial airlines. I mean, back in the Wright brothers, it was like,
right.
oh,
Exactly.
what are we going to do with this?
Right.
Can we get it up to 30 seconds? Maybe. I
Right.
don't know.
Right. Well, and that's a great point too. That then when the airline industry took off, it was for the wealthy and the elite. Like that's it. Just the price point was not there for the everyday person. Cars too were the same way. So yeah, it's just we're in a very interesting point of time where, and I think like Don't Look Up was a very applicable sort of kind of movie at this time where they're just not paying attention, and that is something that comes up in conversations all the time amongst other science communicators is like what will make people pay attention. And I think ultimately to me it's time. You can't force something to be mainstream popular before it's ready. You just can't. It is what it is. People are wild too, so who knows. Maybe maybe something will happen and they'll be like, oh my god, and then they'll just collectively switch their minds. I don't know.
Well, I have a theory if we were sending a dog to the moon, that everybody would know about it.
Okay, if we send a dog,
Yeah.
probably.
They're like,
Or
oh my
like,
gosh. And we'll have debates, can the dog really
is
agree
it
to go?
ethical?
Is it
Yeah,
ethical?
yeah.
Is it fair to all the other dogs who didn't go?
Dogs' rights
What
are
breed of
ultimate.
dog do we send? Does it
Dogs'
really
lives
represent?
matter.
Does it really
Right,
represent all the dogs?
right,
What
yeah.
about the cats?
Well, yeah, right, exactly. Like cats' lives matters too. Yeah, I don't know. It's again, I feel like you're kind of getting close to some of these conversations that not that I'm only having in my spacey circles, but just in like my personal circles and my school circles of just in an ever increasing noisy world, how do you get your message across? Because it's even like my radio show and is competing against everyone who can just throw up a blog or I'm sorry, podcast. Like anyone can. You got a microphone and you have a computer, you have an outlet, you have a platform. Whereas there used to be just, not too long ago, key holders of who released information and when and how that looked. And so, it's a very evolving world in the communications world too. So I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I call myself an optimistic nihilist. And I also am painfully aware of my lens of my background and my upbringing that brings my lens to how I see things sometimes. But I generally am optimistic, but sometimes the nihilist comes out. I'm like, I don't know if humans can pull it together. I don't know. This might be our defining moment as a species, just even looking at the news today and seeing what's happening with like Ukraine and Russia and I read a really great opinion piece when Russia, did their anti-satellite missile test, that it was in response to the United States taking pictures with satellites of them. And that was a message of basically them saying, leave us alone. So sometimes I just kind of wonder, like, if we collectively as a species, if we can pull it together, can we do it? I don't know. That's where my nihilist kind of hangs out a little bit sometimes. But I really devolved from your question of, do people know that we're landing at the moon? I should poll more people though. Honestly, I should just start asking people more blatantly, because it doesn't come up. I don't ask that often. Like, do you know we're going to the moon? By what now? 2025, hopefully?
That's the official NASA date.
Okay.
The NASA Office of Inspector General says that they think it's going to be closer to 2027, 2028. But interestingly enough, China is planning to put people, had been planning for a long time to put people on the moon in the mid 30s. And just a few weeks ago, they announced that they plan to move that up to 2027. Something tells me they see a little opening there to
Yeah,
maybe.
I know. So there's a part of me that's like, are we are we going back to the Cold War? Is that what's happening? Like there's a little bit of me that's wondering if then in response to that, America is going to be like, shh, we got to up our timeline, I don't know.
Well, that's the optimistic view. The other
I
one
guess,
is the
I guess.
sabotage.
Right. I guess, I guess it's also sort of one of those things where obviously politics are going to play a heavy hand into this because if, say Biden doesn't get reelected, which at this rate, I'm not very sure he will. And, then you get someone who, and I tend to vote very liberal for the most part, but I mean, you cannot deny that generally the Republican conservative side does better for space than the Democratic liberal side. And so say we switch political parties again, and then we have somebody that's like, oh my God, let's get it going. We could be in a space race again. And I hate that in a way because I want it to be for science, not for politics. Blue Marble Space Institute of Science, we're very, we have a lot of people who are, interested in space policy, space law, and a lot of them are very behind. Actually, our founder, he started the one flag in space kind of concept, just like, can't we just have one flag? Does it have to be about politics? Does it have to be about a certain country's the next one to stake their flag in the moon? And does it need to be about that? Is that the species of humans that we want to be when we go out there and we start this next chapter? You know what I mean?
When the
I don't
aliens
know.
find us, there's all these white flags all over the solar system
Right.
because they've been bleached
Right.
by the sunlight.
Right, exactly. They'll be like, I always, people, I don't know if you get this too, but especially being an astrobiologist kind of circle person, I get always asked, do I think that if there's life, if there are aliens? And my joke always is like, if there are, they're probably just watching us going, gosh, these people can't even figure it out. Like, they're the same species and they don't like each other because of the color of their skin. Like, my God, how unadvanced are we that we can't even get along amongst our own kind, right? Like our own species. So that there's nothing in that egg. That's my Sarah's had 2 glasses of wine answer. my professional answer is like, we can only assume based off of evidence and science, and that's why Perseverance is looking for stromatolites, because we know that they're probably, we know there was likely water on Mars, and at that time in history we had stromatolites on Earth, so that's what we need to look for there, because we can only base it off of good science. We can't go send up a rover going into caves looking for little green men. It doesn't work that way. And then give me like a couple of glasses of wine, like I said, and then I'm like, and I absolutely believe that there are aliens out there and that there's a possibility that we just maybe don't know that they're there because we're in a quiet corner of the universe. And like, that's me. Once I start going.
Or if you read the 3-body problem trilogy, the other thought is the universe is a dark forest, and we're like the kids who don't know better, putting the campfire out and tracking all the horrors, and all the other aliens have learned to keep their existence secret in order to survive.
Maybe, I don't know. Or they just kind of think we're hilarious, when we send out things like what Arecibo sent out, which I think is hilarious too, because it looks like, Atari, the first message, interstellar message that we sent out, and it's like, burp, 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 like, I know Carl had a hand in it, but still, I look at that and I'm like, I don't think they get the message. I don't know. That's just me. I mean, and I love like Voyagers. I love Voyager so much I have it tattooed on my back, and I love the golden records, but I still even think that they'll be like,
maybe not quite yet.
Yeah.
They need to mature a little.
Like, the scribbles, they tried.
We'll check by on the way back from wherever we're going.
Right. They're trying, like, aw, look at these poorly unevolved little things. They're trying, but they can't stop fighting. So we're just gonna let them hash that out. They might nuke themselves. Yeah, like, that's kind of how. Yeah, I get to ask that a lot though. and that like if NASA's covering things up, which you should probably also know as well, that is a hilarious concept, because even when we have guests on Ask an Astrobiologist, usually, we don't now, but usually it would be on Tuesdays, we would do a tech test, and these people would come in and they'd be like, oh my God, the servers did their reset last night and I can't get into my emails and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, NASA's holding a lot of secrets, right? Because they can't even internally keep themselves organized, but whatever, sure. Yeah, they're holding, they got a big secret. Actually, it's not even that. It's humans can't shut up, right? If you know something, right? And this is probably also the trick to fundamentalism too, is that people, that evangelicalism of them is like, I have this secret and you need to know. Like, there's no way. I even knew that there was a detection of phosphine on Venus before the embargo was lifted. You know, like I knew that like 2 weeks before. I didn't have full confirmation until about 2 days before, but like even I knew, because people can't shut up. So there's no way NASA's keeping anything a secret, but I don't know. That's just me. There's no way people can't shut up. like me.
Yeah, what is it? 3 people could keep a secret if 2 of them are dead, or something like that.
Yeah, right. Right. Pretty much, right? There's just no way. But yeah, sorry, I can ramble a lot, so you stop me. And I'll need to wrap it up by like 1:30 at the absolute latest, because I got to go get my daughter from school. But yeah.
So would you consider taking a trip to space?
Yes, I would not go to Mars, but yes, I would go to space.
Why not Mars? I mean,
why not Mars? It's a long trip and it's too unsafe to me at this point. Maybe like down the road, but no, not right now. Which is funny because I'm going on an analog Mars mission, right? But to me, I would definitely want to go to space, but the prospect of Mars right now is incredibly dangerous. And I learned something about myself on the Everest Trail too. I will never summit. Nope. To me, that is like unnecessary level of risk. Because there's a section on the trail that there are these like pillars and there's plaques on each side of them. And there are so many of these pillars, and it's to the hikers that have died trying to summit. And almost all of them, it's just, it's almost hard not to be kind of cynical. And you're like, you're stupid. Like, what, you know, like, why did you, like, it's because most of them, actually, I learned later, is because when you're going up, if you haven't hit a certain point per the amount of oxygen that you're, bringing with you, you should turn around and go back down. But these people have spent thousands and thousands of dollars, trained for probably 2 years. And so their pride, their hubris, if you will, won't let them. So they're like, nope, I'm going to go up. So most of them make it up and then they die somewhere on the point coming back down because they run out of oxygen and they can't handle it. But to me, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like, I've been up to 17,500 feet and like, we're just not, I don't know. It's just, that was hard enough. I don't need to take my life into my hands much more than that at this point. And that's how I feel about going to Mars. Like, I'll go to space, but I won't go to Mars. Not yet.
Okay, so imagine this scenario: 2050, million-person city on Mars, nuclear war here on Earth. Would you go to Mars? Would you go to Mars then?
Probably, yeah. Like, see you suckers. Yeah. I don't know. If there was a nuclear war here, I mean, you wouldn't really even have a choice probably much at that point, right? You kind of have to go if you want to survive, or live under bunkers or something like that in some sort of post-apocalyptic kind of world. I don't know. That's a big ethical one too, right? Because yeah, I don't know. I'm saying yes, because that's my selfish survival nature in me. But, as long as my kids can come, sure. Yeah. Oh my gosh, my phone is blowing up.
Sorry. One last question. How about that?
Yeah, no, you're fine. No, it's my Ask an Astrobiologist. We have a show on Thursday, so it's just the Slack channel going ding, 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 ding right now. No worries. I'll catch up.
Um, so imagine your great great granddaughter was born on Mars,
Okay.
lived on Mars her entire life. She's in a high school class. Of course, she's half the age as high schoolers are today because of the 2 year
Right.
thing, but
Of
whatever.
course, yes.
And she's having to do this paper on what was it like on Earth before we took those next steps on the moon. And she sees this interview, and what you say in the next minute, I can help her get an A. What would that be?
What Earth was like before we went to the moon?
Like these next time, this Artemis.
Like,
Like,
I'm sorry. So she's asking me to get an A, what life was like before this next time going to the moon, correct?
right. Which
Okay,
would
okay.
have been the beginning of the journey that led to the
To
settlement
getting to
on
Mars.
Mars.
What life was like.
Yeah.
I would say that life, in some ways, it was an amazing time to be alive because it is. It's, it was an amazing time to be alive because we had basically human life expectancy, some of the best we've ever seen, medicine, the best we've ever had, technology, always was rapidly improving at that point, and it was just getting better and better and better. But there are also some dark sides to that advancement because we didn't fully understand how our own human condition and our evolution would adapt to such, like, I don't know if I'm making sense here. Like you and I talking right now, right? That's an amazing part of this human technology and this human, advancements that we're doing. But we also have started to rely on this so much that we don't even interact face to face as much as we used to. And there's some obvious mental health problems with that. There's obviously, we have not out evolved ourselves to the point where it's like, I don't need any human connection and don't need to see anybody, right? So it's like this weird, like two sides of a coin where some of it's great and some of it's not great. And there's this huge polarization right now and this digital divide that's occurring where we don't understand each other. And it's so easy to keyboard warrior, hide behind your keyboards and just throw words at each other. But oh God, you're really hitting my optimistic nihilist thing. What was it like? It was cool, but I kind of wish I would have been you living on Mars. I don't know. Like,
all right. I mean, she's probably wishing she was you, being able to walk outside and didn't have to wear a spacesuit all the time.
That's true.
And,
unless they've terraformed it, which I think is highly unlikely that we'll be able to successfully do that. But that's true, right? And Earth is beautiful. It's amazing. Actually, it was really funny. We had an astrobiologist that came on our show one time. It was a panel, and they went around and they asked everybody what their favorite planet was, and everybody said Earth. But one guy's, his justification was, he's like, well, Earth, because I don't know, all my stuff's on it. But yeah, the Earth is really, really amazing and a great place to live. And yeah, it's because we evolved and we adapted to live on this planet and we're screwing it up. So that's the dark side of it too, right? I don't know how I would still answer it. I'm not giving you a very concrete answer here. It's hard, right? It's hard because there's so much beauty and then there's so much ugliness all at the same time. And it's that intricate web of just being alive where you can't take a thread and say, aha, this is the problem and where we went wrong without messing up the whole web. That's kind of how I see things now. And that's a lens that I bring from my fundamental system because I know how that they got to where they are because they came from, backtrack to, I don't want to say the Dark Ages, but you know what I mean, the Dark Ages, and there was so much uncertainty and warfare and strife. And so that's how you had the church really come into power because they, they were a system of control, and it was what stepped in at that time. And, and all these are just products and leftovers of that time. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this. I just see everything very complicated. Nothing is very easy for me to answer now at this point because I don't know. Everyone seems so fixed on they have the right answer or the right viewpoint, and I don't think that that's right, because especially, you know, living in the United States as you do, it's so extreme left and so extreme right, and it's like no one can seem to find a place to meet. So that's a hard time to be alive, at least socially at this point. And then and then I just go to a mountain and I climb it and ignore.
But I think the interesting thing about these extremes is they're actually not new for the United States. Like, I mean, we've had multiple assassinations of presidents.
Sure.
We've had senators kill each other inside the Senate chamber. We've had a civil war, and sometimes it feels like we're really falling apart, but we've been like constantly falling apart. It's like the past we survived. And that's why we have our confidence about now and the past. We know how it turned out, but it's just like now we're on the edge of our seats. This could be the time. This could be the time.
Right. Yeah. Well, true. And that, I mean, to your point, then I think that a lot of people don't look at history and use it with that context of looking now and saying, okay, let's look at what happened. Again, I'm going to use the Dark Ages, if you will, as an example, but before the Dark Ages, you had the Greeks and the Romans, and oh my gosh, and all of the advancements that they made, and all of those just poof went away, and it was because of, and again, this is my lens, and I do apologize for it, but it was because of religion. It was because of dogmatic religion stepping in and taking over. And then you had them banning, like, people being allowed to do autopsies, and they had just really weird, not weird, I'm just going to say it, like, God's in control, so we'll just pray it away, right? Black flag, oh, God's in control, let's just pray it away. And then I see that now in like the way that like my family treats like COVID, right? I'm not going to live in fear. I'm just going to pray and God will, make it go away. And I see those scary things kind of cropping up, and it's sort of like, but it didn't really work out for, the people of the Black Plague to pray it away. I'm just saying that wasn't a really good solution. That's the thing. And I'm fairly critical of both sides now, because I also think that that the left critiques heavily in the same breath of also crying being a victim. And I see that happening quite a lot, more and more so. And they're kind of almost socialism-esque viewpoints that they want to bring are sort of like, well, yeah, but like, look at the other countries that tried socialism and it really didn't work out so great, and so like we need to be careful what we're asking for, and how we're asking it and how we're handling ourselves. So I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird place to be in for me right now, like seeing all sides of it and being like, I see that extreme, and yep, sometimes I just stay in my little space lane and I just kind of let everybody squabble on the side. So I don't know if that would get her an A. I'm just gonna be honest. She'd be like, that great grandma of mine just rambled in this really weird way.
It was a very confusing time. I have proof.
Like, she had no idea. And I'll be like, nope, I had no idea. What I just try to do, honestly, now at this point, because I'm like, what would I tell about someone being alive right now? What I do my best to do is just meet people with empathy and understanding, and try to understand how to communicate to them in a way that is empathetic to kind of their experiences and world viewpoints. So like, for example, when the billionaire space race thing went on and everyone was getting all up in arms, I find when you're dealing with more left-leaning liberal people to say, hey, it's not maybe it, yes, I understand billionaires and stuff like that. It maybe doesn't look great to you right now, but being able to eventually move industry off Earth can help with climate change. It can help save our planet. It can help make this place more, kind of like Garden of Eden, like nature, nature preservation. Like if you go with that angle, they're like, yeah, that does make sense. And like, yay, space. And then you have the more like conservative capitalism, right-leaning people, and you're like, yeah, there's freaking asteroids out there that we can go mine the shit out of. And they're like, fuck yeah, you know, like, and so like, you know, if you understand where they're coming from, you can kind of, you know, try to get people on board in a way that isn't like, nobody wins when you come in guns a-blazing, right? Like nobody wins if you're coming in and being like, screw you and your ideas, and then they're like, screw you. So
well, we do that in space too, right? The moon,
well,
no,
yeah, we do.
Mars.
Yeah,
The
it's
moon's
everywhere.
pointless.
It's humans, right? It's humans. It's us. It's
Yeah.
us. But that's also what's so amazing about us is that it is us, you know. One of the first pieces I ever wrote for Blue Marble was, why do we waste money on space when there's so many problems on Earth? And my approach to that was, why did the people who discovered new continents decide to just get on a boat and go? You know, they had absolutely no assurance that there was going to be something on the other side. They just did it, you know, especially think about the Aboriginals who went to Australia, or, you know, like those, you know, they got on their rafts and they went. And there's just something inside us that just calls us to go and explore. And I think that that's the beautiful part about humans. And that's why we should go. And that's my more like romantic kind of, you know, we should go because it's in our DNA. And that's a not a very scientific thing to say, but, you know, we go because we're supposed to go. But yeah, again, that's right. I find the right audience to say it that way, because I've had times also where people really push me on that, and they're like, if it's so dangerous to go to space, why are we doing it? And I'm like, because we're supposed to. And they're like, no, we're not, because we would die. So we're not. And I'm like, you're right. You know, like, I don't know how to win sometimes, but it's not a game to win. But yeah.
But, you know, another approach to that question is, what would it take to solve those problems? And you know, we have 8 billion people here on Earth. How come? I mean, we have 8 billion brains that are capable of solving problems, but I feel like we're wasting those brains. That they're not kind of engaged in those actual problem solving. I mean, it doesn't matter how many people you have push on the rock, as they're all pushing at it from the different sides, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think, and a lot of people don't like it, but I do think there's some credence to the hierarchy of needs, you know, pyramid, that, you know, a large portion of that 8 billion, they're just focused on surviving, just getting their next meal and keeping themselves dry. But ultimately still though, I mean, how does that explain a lot of people in the United States? I don't know. Right? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
I have
even
this
the
conversation.
350 million of us in the United States, I feel like we could do way more.
I agree. It's one of those things that I probably will spend my whole life pondering and wondering on, what makes some people a certain way, what makes people another way. Like, what makes somebody more of a critical thinker than another person? Like, why did I leave the church and two of my sisters who are very intelligent are still in it? You know what I mean? Like, why? I don't know. I honestly have no idea, because especially it's my older sister I'm thinking about in particular. She and I were raised we're only 2 years apart. So very similarly, you know, went to the same schools, had the same kind of, you know, basically comparatively the same story. And I was the one always pushing the questions and asking why. And it blows my mind. She's still in this church where, as a non-married woman, like, she has no voice, because she has no man representing her, because that's what needs to be in that church system, is that you have to be represented by a man. You know, very patriarchal. And but she also works as a research assistant for I don't know how to explain, but she does she helps with researchers who are doing research on Alzheimer's at like a medical college. I don't understand. I don't get it. But like, you know, what makes certain people the way that they are versus other people who, I don't know. I just don't get it. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. And I might not ever figure it out. But right, how of 350 million, why are there only so many people that are really pushing that envelope? And then why are there so many other people that are just completely content to just punch a clock, go sit on their couch, drink beer, and watch Netflix? I don't know. I just don't know. So, and I don't know. Again, it goes back to my nihilist side where I'm like, are we gonna be okay? Are we as a species gonna be okay? I don't know. But hopefully, with the moon, go with Artemis, maybe hopefully with more. I think the moon's going to be a big turning point for space. I really do. Someone argued against that with me the other day, and I was like, no, I really think about how many generations have not seen anybody walk on the moon, mine included. I think that's going to be huge, especially in the context of all the technology we have now. And the ability to, I don't know, live stream it, but not, you know what I mean? Maybe not live, but you know what I mean? Like the ability to record and have more of a real-time experience with it than, and I mean, we did with Apollo, and Apollo 11 to me is probably the pinnacle of science communication so far. Like nothing has peaked like that ever. And so I think that maybe Artemis will be a turning point. I don't know. Maybe that'll switch maybe 50 million more brains to like, should get more excited about, I don't know, learning and exploring and asking questions, maybe.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be a big turning point. I think a big turning point after that is going to be whenever you can actually look at the moon from the Earth and see evidence of human activity.
Yeah,
like, that's going to be mind blowing to people.
See lights on the moon. Yeah, I agree. I heard that from somebody. I don't remember who said it. Was it Neil? But somebody was like, think about it. The generations being born right now might not ever remember like a naked moon, like not seeing artificial lighting of some form on the moon. And that is a very powerful thing to share with people, because that really does blow their minds. Because again, it's sort of that real, it's that human thing, right? It's real then. It's not just like, like James Webb is almost to L2 right now, but now it's just numbers. We can't see it. So I feel like that disconnects it to humans caring anymore. When you don't have that visual, connection to it, it just becomes numbers. And then going back to my fundraising example, it just becomes numbers and it's not real, right? And that's like, that's our brain. That's like evolutionary wiring in us too. Like we have to sort through the noise to get to the point of what matters. And so that's, to me, like, yeah, I don't know. Everything's so freaking complex all the time. I don't ever have like straightforward answers anymore to anything.
Yeah, I was had a vision one time looking at the full moon, thinking, at some point there'll be like a whole bunch of greenhouses around the moon, and maybe the entire moon gets encapsulated in like this continuous greenhouse. And then we would have this group emerge like Greenpeace, but for the moon, and it'd be called like Greypeace.
Greypeace. I don't know if that's got a good ring to it. It might not be, yeah.
It's a little gray.
Perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that, to me is also, again, going back to the positive thing, the prospects of all the industry and the infrastructure and the even the politics and the laws and the governing that's going to have to get created for that, to me, is so exciting. Like that's just so freaking cool. The idea that we have suddenly this whole new world, if you will, to come up with rules and languages and laws and governing and understanding, to me, that's just so exciting. And I think that can bring out the best of humanity in us. Hopefully. It's just sometimes I think we need to get out of our own way and stop fighting so much, which I don't know if we can do that, but we'll see. It's an interesting time.
Sarah,
yeah.
I really appreciate the time, and I feel like you and I could probably talk forever. But
probably.
I definitely don't want to contribute to you being late to pick up your dog.
No, yeah, that would probably not be good, considering it's like 9 degrees outside, and because of COVID, we have to meet them outside. So that probably would not be the best idea. But yes, it was really nice meeting you. Yeah, I can definitely try to, maybe you think of someone super fundamental I could suggest to you. I will warn you that at least from my circle, they're going to be pretty like, what's this about? Who's this for? Especially coming from me too, because like I said, I'm on the blacklist. So it's okay. I'm all right with it. My joke now is like, did I disappoint my parents today? Yes. Like, simply by like saying a swear word. That's it. Done. Yeah. But yeah, definitely we should keep in touch because I'd love to hear about your new endeavor, and I mean selfishly then get an in with Artemis if you get to do that someday. So but you have my email, and then yeah, Space Case Sarah, if you just Google that, I'm all over the place now. I'm obnoxious like that, but yeah, it'd be really cool to stay in touch.
I look forward to it. Well, you have a good rest of your day, and
Thank
take
you.
care.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.